All right, let's go. Let's go. I need a camera. There's me. There's you. Just got home, so I'm still in work attire. It is what it is. Okay. All right. What do we got? Let's see. Chat. All right, chat. What do we got? Practice exam FRQ1. All right. AP Classroom. Got it. Okay. Let's have a look there. Yeah, breaking down a whole FRQ is not a waste of time at all, so that's not a terrible thing to do. Fix this camera, though. It's like way low. No one needs to see my gut on camera. It's not helping anybody. All right. Oh, Tony Ravioli back in the chat. All-star chatter, Tony Ravioli. All right. Practice exam 1. Got it. I just did this. Yeah, CFA for sure, Gianna. That I've already decided to do. It's a very, very yes, we must do that. Money velocity is a good one. That's a good point. You probably came across a multiple choice question. You're like, what the hell is that? That's I'll explain that. That's very easy, but it's one question, and it will be there. So we'll take care of that, no problem. All right, practice exam 1, FRQ1. Who requested this? All right, whoever's not logging, make sure you tell me this is the one you want, right? Because if it's not, I need to know. And then I'm going to need Microsoft Paint. Got to get in the Paint. All right, Paint. All right. Cool. Here we go. So follow along on your end if you need to, if you can't see it on the screen too well, but it looks like it's zoomed in pretty well. We should be all right. Okay. All right. So assume a country's economy is in a short-run equilibrium. Again, every country is always in a short-run equilibrium. It's a matter of whether or not it's also in long-run equilibrium. There's always an equilibrium. It just might be recessionary or inflationary. And the actual unemployment rate is lower than the natural rate of unemployment. So what does that mean, right? Well, if we've got unemployment on a line, and current unemployment is, I don't know, if the natural rate of unemployment is here, and this rate is lower than that, then you have inflationary gap. You have less than the natural rate of unemployment. That's very tricky wording, so be able to deal with it, but that's what it means. You got less than the natural rate of unemployment, all right? So do keep that in mind as your, oh God, that needs to be bigger. There we go. Do keep that in mind, all right? So that's going to factor into the question, I'm sure. Yeah, crowding out, no problem. Discount rate, no problem. Okay. Yeah. Line tool. All right. 1. 2. 1. Stop. I hate you. There. All right. So, drawing it out, right? Now, I'm doing this not in the order I would recommend. I'm doing this in an order that I can actually do on Microsoft Paint. So, you know, give a brother a break here. But there's our inflationary gap. We have SRAS. We have AD. One day I'm going to invest in a cheapo little pad for these things. LRAS. Okay, YF. All right, that's no good because that's going to get in the way. Let me do this with a text box so that way we're not actually creating a disaster for ourselves here. So YF. Okay, now. Other labels, right? So price level, not PL. You know who I'm talking to. And real GDP. Okay. Now, you're asked to label the initial equilibrium values. I'm assuming PL1 and Y1, yes, and the full employment level, YF. All right. So you know me and how I feel about getting these points and not giving them away. So here is your PL1, and here is your Y1. All right? There. There's your Y1. So that's the initial setup. That's the way it's supposed to look. All right? Obviously, it takes a lot longer. Yeah, I know. You know who I'm talking to. All right? So that's that right there. So this would be a 10-point question. All the bits of this would be a 10-point question. Right there, that is 2 points. 1 point for correctly setting it up and labeling the PL1 and Y1, and another point for the correctly labeled output of YF. Literally drawing the LRAS and putting YF there gets you a whole point. So this is what I mean by these are easy points. You can't give these away. But again, if I come back to the average score on any one of these questions is about half the points. So if you can get 6.5 points. You can't get half a point, right? But you can get 6 points or 7 points out of 10. It may sound bad, I got 60% of the points, but if everybody else is getting 4.8 on average, that's a statistically significant difference, right? Keep that in mind. And it adds up. You have 3 questions in the part 2. Those differences will add up point by point. There's only a maximum of 20 points here. It's not like they can get, a million points. All right, so I'll put my phone where I can see it in case. All right. All right, we're not doing anything with this graph? Apparently not. All right, so we got ample reserves. Fine. What monetary policy actions the country's central bank used to move the... All right, somewhere in your notes about 3 or 4 days ago, I did a whole breakdown of monetary policy, what it looks like if you're going to use limited reserves, and what it looks like if you're going to use ample reserves. Ample reserves has only one policy. The only thing you can do with ample reserves... The only option you have is to change administered interest rates. That's your only tool. So you have a choice. If you need to expand the economy, then you lower these. If you want to contract the economy, you raise these. What do we want to do with an inflationary gap? Well, we've got too much GDP out there. We have not enough unemployment. We need to get this back down. You got 2 ways of doing that effectively. Well, I guess there's 3. There's 1, do a fiscal policy, shift AD to the left and fix it. No, my mouse is in the wrong place. And then fix it that way. You could do that and bring AD down to cross over here. That's option 1. Option 2 is raise these interest rates. And then, do I still have it? Hold on. One second. I saved these from the other day. Let me find it. Option 2 is to activate this mechanism, which was from the last stream. So if you don't, I'm not going to go through it in the same detail, but the mechanism is manipulate or influence or change interest rates, which leads to 2, 3, and 4, and eventually that means a change in AD. So you're still changing AD, you're just coming at it from the monetary policy perspective. So you can go right at it with fiscal. In this case, we're using monetary. So what you're going to do here is you're going to raise these interest rates. That will reduce the amount of borrowing in the economy, and it'll increase the amount of spending in the economy. Reduce the amount of borrowing and increase the amount of savings in the economy. If I save more, I spend less. Remember, savings and spending is a binary option. You have 2 choices with your money. Save or spend. That's what MPC and MPS means. It means they have to equal 1. So if I'm saving $1, I'm not spending that $1. If I'm spending $1, I'm not saving that $1. If interest rates go up, I am more inclined to save. The banks are offering me higher interest rates. One of the questions in today's challenge was in class, what is the opportunity cost? What is the problem? What do you lose what is a potential problem of higher interest rates? And the answer was your opportunity cost for holding on to your money goes up. Holding on to your money is another way of saying spend it, right? So I don't have it here. But if I have money in my pocket, right, if this is a pile of money and it's sitting on this shelf on this desk, then I'm not saving it. This is holding money. So whether you have it in the shoebox, the safety deposit box, the cookie jar, whatever, the change in the whiskey barrel, those things are all you holding money. If they were in the bank, you'd be getting something for it. So why is it in the bank? Because you find value in liquidity. Everybody does. Makes sense. But there is an opportunity cost. And as the interest rates go up, that opportunity cost goes up. And you're more likely to save. So more likely to save means you will still shift AD to the left. So less borrowing, less savings. Okay, so yeah. Gianna, rephrase that question in a way that makes sense. Opportunity cost exists in 100 forms throughout everything you do in life. So tell me what you mean. Like, if you're asking me to explain opportunity cost in a general sense, I will. If you're asking me to explain it in a certain way or a certain concept or attached to something, just point that out. Because, like I said, it exists in 100 different ways. Being here right now has an opportunity cost. So when you say up or down, you got to explain that a little bit to me. But let's go back with while you do that, let's go back to the question. So, okay, I will do that. All right, so in the question, what monetary policy? So you're going to raise the administered interest rates. That's the only possible answer, okay? And if you don't believe me, I'll show you the key, all right? Because I was asked the other day, like, is there any other way to state that, right? So here's B. Administered interest rates. Those are your options. That's your only option. That's the way we say it with those ample reserves. All right, back to this. So right now, that's 3 points on the board, right? So draw the graph, ample reserves. Okay, it's all right. That I will explain. If you find a multiple choice, you can point out with that. That'd be helpful. But I think I know what they're talking about when they ask that question, Gianna. I will explain that. All right. Assume the country is banking, so we did that. Draw the reserve market. Show how this. All right, fine, easy. All right. So now we draw the reserve market. Okay, let's do that. So we drew this for funsies. I mean, we're not doing anything with it. I have no idea what the plan was there. Maybe they come back to it. I really don't remember. All right. So reserves market. Here we go. All right, remember, it's a little goofy, right? I'm going to try and freehand this. God help me. No, I already don't like it. There. No. I'll take it. Good enough. Okay. Uh-huh. If you are Rick Sicoli, you're getting banned. And since you're probably not, you're still getting banned. Love you too, Rick. Hit me up one day. Send an email. Hope you're doing well. All right. So, over here. Policy rate. Down here. Quantity of reserves. Over here. DR. That's demand for reserves, right? And I'm using the lowercase r because I don't want to confuse you. And then SR, supply of reserves. Now over here, where's our little guy? Here we go. Boop, bop, beep, bop, boop, bing. This is our policy rate. Did they tell us what to label it? Hold on, they might have told us. They told us nothing. Okay, just show the effect. We will do that, no problem. All right, so there's our policy rate. And then theoretically, you should have a dotted line doing that as well. All right. Sorry for it not being the most elegant. Obviously, reserve market title. Okay, reserves market title. Sorry about that, but I'm trying to make this all happen. All right. So down over here, we're gonna have our Q, and we should be good to go. So that's a correctly drawn reserves market. If you're gonna raise the rates, which we said we're gonna do because we need to contract this economy, it goes like this. You bring this up, right? So you're gonna go up with an arrow. How far? As far as you like. Wherever that is, you're going to cut this off and call this DR1. My God, that's horrifying. Here, let me type it out, because the person looking at this later will be like, what the hell is that? And I don't want that to happen. DR1. And then over here, you're going to likewise continue to bring this up and then over. All right, please notice that I'm trying to keep this all connected here. Yeah, I'll do my best. There, kind of okay. You bring that up, and then you got to draw the dotted line this way, a dotted line over there, and this here is your PR1, and that's how you show the raising administered interest rates. It's not difficult, really. It's pretty simple as long as you know how to draw the graph. On this graph, for what it's worth, I cannot ever imagine them asking you to move the supply of reserves. It just wouldn't make sense. There's no policy impact for doing it, so I can't imagine they'd ever ask you to show it. I can't promise, but if I was a betting man, I would not bet that they would do that. All right, so moving back to the question. So right there, that's another point for drawing the graph right. So there's 4 points right there. Now, oh, and the shift. Would that be 2 points? No, it's probably only 1 point. Let's have a look at the breakdown. So A, 2 points. B, 1 point. C, no, 2 points. So that's pretty good. It's a good deal right there. So they're giving you a point for this and a point for that. And you can see yourself, here's the answer and what it's supposed to look like, all right? So I did it to show you, but it's pretty good. Pretty good. So that's 2 points, not a bad deal at all. So right there, you're already up to 5 points. So at 2, 4, 5 points. Pretty good. So I don't know. I feel like a huge proportion of this class could have gotten these 5 points. At the very least, you could have gotten the first 2 for drawing the graph for the ADIS with the proper gap. All right, maybe you goof up the what monetary policy action. All right, fine. But you can't. You can draw the reserves market. You definitely can. So 3 points at a minimum, I would think. Now D, based on the change from part C, which we showed an increase, which will each of the following increase, decrease, or remain the same in the short run. All right, so I actually explained this already, but here we go. Real output. Real output is GDP. The explanation is the mechanism I just pointed out here. That's your explanation. He's back. Oh, Jesus Christ. So, increasing interest rates will reduce the willingness of interest-sensitive components of your economy. Those are your consumers and your investors to borrow. As a result, they will spend less, reducing AD/GDP. That's the mechanism, right? Simple as that. Natural rate of unemployment. All right. In the short run, nothing. But let me give you a warning. So the answer is nothing. There's no movement in the short run. That is the answer, unchanged. But let's say they asked you about growth, or they asked you about what happens in the long run. Now, hang on. If you raise interest rates in the long run, you hurt growth, and you shift LRS to the left, LRPC to the right. That means you're actually increasing the natural rate of unemployment. I know it seems a little goofy to think of it that way, but you're going to have to take my word on this. That's the way she goes. In the long run, anything that increases interest rates hurts your growth. In the long run, anything that decreases interest rates helps your growth, increases the growth. But they said the short run. So since they said the short run, natural rate of unemployment does not change. I think it was Paige who asked me in class, or somebody asked me, hey, when is something unchanged? If I had to take a guess, the thing that is most often unchanged in these part twos is going to be the natural rate of unemployment more than anything else. So if there's ever a question of natural rate of unemployment and you don't know what the answer is, make it no change. That is very likely to be true. Because if they were going to ask you about growth, they just asked about growth. They wouldn't even ask about this. They'd ask about growth. All right. Assume instead the government does sweet nothing. What will happen? Okay, so what will happen? All right, so if the government does nothing, we know what will happen, right? Let's go back to our original graph. Here we go. The government does nothing. When the government does nothing, supply is going to be the thing that takes over. And in this case, supply has to move to fix the economy. To fix the economy, you got to go here. There's no other place for supply to move and fix this economy. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen is going to be supply shifting over like that, SRAS1, and you have obviously a new price level, etc., and you have YF equals Y2, and that's the situation. Now you're not asked to graph that unless I missed it. You're asked to explain that. So let's explain that mechanism, right? What is that mechanism? How does the economy self-adjust? So let's take it one step at a time. If you're in an inflationary gap, as we were here, number one, increasing input prices, wages most typically in this case, but because you're paying a lot of workers to do a whole lot of nothing. Again, think of the restaurant. The restaurant has 10 waiters but 5 customers. Somebody's going home. We need to reduce our supply. We don't need all these workers. So somebody's getting fired tonight. At least 4 tonight. Someone's getting fired, right? So, due to an excess of input or increasing input costs, businesses will reduce supply and to cut those costs, thereby raising prices and reducing GDP, but also increasing unemployment. As a result, bringing you back to the equilibrium. That's your explanation. Now I'm going to show you the official explanation so you can see it in more concise terms. But here you go. Wrong question, sorry. Here we go, E. The short-run aggregate supply curve will shift to the left in the wrong one and explains that nominal wages will increase. Now, it's another way of saying, again, interest-sensitive components. This often confuses students. Why is it that why would wages increase if I'm firing people? Because remember, in an economy with overemployment, where too many people are working, right? What actually is going on? Well, what's actually going on is if you want to get a good worker to work for you, you got to lure them away. You're not going to be able to get somebody off the dog pile, right? So, for example, if I need to hire a social studies teacher and I got 35 people out there who want a job, I'm hiring them at the cheapest possible rate. But if, for example, I need a good choir teacher and there aren't a lot of good candidates out there, and I want to get someone who's good, I might have to go to somebody who already has a job and say, hey, I'll give you a bonus to sign with us. That's what increases wages, stuff like that. I got to pay more than the minimum or more than the market or outbid the market or lure you away from your job with better opportunities, better employment in order to get that good employee to fill the needs I have. And that ups wages across the board, right? So there you go. Because remember, like imagine that for a moment, right? Real life. So if teaching is a terrible example, so because we're public sector, but I'll use my friend John who I've described in the past. Yeah, I'm doing the whole FRQ. I thought you wanted me to do the whole thing. I was going to do all 3 questions. So if that's not the case, stop me. So when my friend John was working, if you want to get him away from his job, you're going to have to pay him more than he's currently paying. Let's say you do that. You offer this guy, I don't know, 15% more salary, whatever the number thing is, and you lure him away. Well, the job that just lost that employee realizes if we want to fill that gap with a quality employee, we weren't paying enough because this guy just walked and there was somebody out there willing to pay him more. We're going to have to raise our wages when we fill this gap because this guy just left because he just proved to us we're not paying enough. So not only does he make more money in his new job, the guy that fills his old job also is going to get paid more because after all, that's what made this guy leave in the first place. So those are all reasons why wages go up. Now, it does mean anyone who's not picking up their end of the couch is getting fired. You know, so if I have 10 waiters and 5 tables, and this happens every night for 3 months, and this is what's going on, eventually I'm going to cut staff. And barring some weird rule like seniority in the public sector, which I said teachers are not a good example of this, who am I keeping? I'm keeping my best employees. Now my best employees are going to say, yeah, man, but now I don't have 10 people to help me with the 5 tables. It's just us. You're right. But don't worry, we're going to give you a slice of the salary that each of those people used to earn. We're still saving money as a business because we cut those salaries, and we're giving you a little bonus on top of it for the extra work you have to do. So the wages are going to go up. That's how it works. But you're cutting that excess labor that wasn't producing anything anyway. All right, and then the last part of the question, what happens to employment? Just be careful and read it. It doesn't say unemployment, it says employment. So back to our graph here, right? Employment is going to decrease. Unemployment is going to increase. All right, so question 2 is confusing. So there's question 1. Very doable question, in my opinion. Nothing particularly shocking there. Let's have us a gander at question 2. Question 2. All right, we got T accounts. I was asked today to talk about T accounts. Let me get my fat head out of the way. Boom. We're moving. All right. We got Raymond Bank. All right. Balance sheet for Raymond Bank, commercial banks in the country. This is a limited reserve system. I mean, it has to be. You can't get a T account question. You can't get a T account question that isn't limited reserves. And since it's limited reserves, that you know that because there's a required reserve ratio, right? That's how you know it's limited reserves. So, what do we got? We got demand deposits of $20,000. We got equity. Equity is net worth, same thing. That's owner's equity. That means there's stuff on the asset side that the bank owns, that ownership of the bank owns in turn. So, for example, treasury bonds. If the bank owns $10,000 in treasury bonds, but they sell it off to the public, or somebody in the bank is a stockholder, whatever it might be, that's who owns the thing. That's why it's over there. It's an equity position. And so your total liabilities and equity, meaning the entire side over there, is $25,000. Okay, cool. Other side's got to be 25,000 also, otherwise it's an error. It's divided by 0. This question can't possibly work. So both sides got to equal the same thing. Now on the asset side, we got reserves. Now they don't say if it's required or excess reserves. Spoiler alert, I have not looked at this question. I can guarantee you the first thing they're going to ask you is to calculate what the required reserves are, which is another way of saying figure out what the required reserve ratio is. Guaranteed. If they give you the reserves number in one lump like that, they're going to ask you to calculate that percentage. It's just no other way. They definitely will do that. Business loans, those are loans already extended to businesses. Student loans are loans already extended to students. There's no particular difference between the two as far as a bank is concerned. Government securities are going to be those bonds. So that's where your owner's equity comes in. Now you might say, wait a minute, how do you have $2,000 in government securities but $5,000 in equity? What's going on there? Well, that's totally reasonable because, again, somebody owns the bank. So there's parts of the bank that people are owed. So, for example, if I'm owed a dividend from these loans, then I own the loan. You know, I own parts of it. So that's all that is. Just don't worry about that part. It doesn't have to match 1-to-1 on the dollar side there. All right, here we go. Calculate the required reserves. Oh, Jesus, like I knew what the hell's going on. All right, so what is the required reserve? So let's just pull this sucker up over here. And is this really the best place to do it? No, not really. Let's pull out the calculator. We got a calculator in here? We sure do. Bam. All right, there we go. All right, so calculate the required reserve. Show your work. What is required reserves? Required reserves is the percentage of deposits. All right, the percentage of deposits. So what? Oh, I'm back in the way of the calculator. Sorry. Is there a better place to do this? Not really. Can I make this smaller? That's worse. That's bigger. All right, whatever. I'll do my best. Here, we don't need the question for a second. So, required reserves. The required reserves number, the dollars you need, are going to be the percentage of demand deposits you must keep in your vault in a limited reserve system. So, we know they're keeping $5,000 in deposits. How can we figure out whether or not they have required reserves or not? Like, are these all required reserves? Are these excess reserves? Let's find out about that. So, what do you do? So let me show you what they show you in terms of doing the work, right? How do you figure this stuff out? I don't even need the calculator really now to think about it. So if we go down to the key, I want you to see what they consider to be work, right? So the actual amount of the required reserves is $2,000. How do they do that? 10%. How do we know it's 10%? They say it right here. They say it right there, right? Not a secret. So you just do $10,000 of the 10% of the $20,000, and you figure out how much is required reserves. So it's really that simple, and that's all the math they want. I mean, if you show something that basic, you're good to go. That's all you have to do. And by the way, you can even say the required reserve is 10% of $20,000, therefore it's $2,000. Like, that's fine. You don't have to show like an actual mathematical equation. As long as you show your work, you demonstrate how you arrived at it, you're going to be fine. Now, I'll tell you right now, again, I'm not previewing the question. I'm just telling you what I know. The next question is probably going to be how much can they lend out? Because if they can lend out, if they can keep 2,000, or if they have to keep 2,000, what's left of that is what they can lend out. Calculate the maximum amount of additional loans that Raymond Bank can make without selling. It's holding a government securities. Okay. So it's not allowed to sell this to get extra money. So if it wants to make loans, what's the maximum it can make right now? Well, it had $5,000 in reserve. We said $2,000 is required. That means $3,000 is available to be loaned. There's your answer, $3,000. If any of this is complicated, just slow it down and just slowly ask yourself what we do. Nah. We can't do that. Next. Assume Raymond Bank and other banks now lend out all excess reserves. That's typical behavior in a limited reserves framework. That's called loaned up, right? The banks typically want to loan every dollar they can. That's how they make their money in limited reserves. All right. So calculate the maximum possible change in demand deposits throughout the banking system. Show your work. Okay. So again, without popping out the... well, let me answer this question before I move on. Is it always going to be demand deposits yes. You're always going to get a demand deposit number, always in this. And that is the only thing you base it on. The purpose of them giving you the equity is to throw you off. They want you to try and do 10% of 25,000. Oh my God. Okay, Kayla, thank you. My God, you people. All right, I really should start taking money. Anyway, just to put up with this. So, right, back to this. So anyway, so we're going to calculate the maximum possible change. Now you need the money multiplier. Let's talk about the money multiplier. The money multiplier is 1 over the required reserve ratio, which in this case is 10%. So it's 1 over 0.10. 1 over 0.10 is 10. If I have one pizza that I divide into 10% chunks, I get 10 chunks, 10 slices, right? Simple as. It's pretty much what it's always going to be. I mean, they could use 20%, I guess, for the required reserve ratio, but they really try not to in general. I'm not enabling super chats. Absolutely not. So, anyway, there's the situation. That's what you do. So you need that number. So you have a 10% required reserve ratio. 1 over 0.10 gives you a 10 multiplier. That multiplier has got to be multiplied by the loans this bank can make. So the bank can make a $3,000 loan. 3 times 10, the answer should be $30,000. Let's go ahead and check our question to see if we're right about that. Yeah, they can make 3,000. Here we go. Sorry, I was on the wrong answer. Wrong part of the answer. Stop. So $30,000. See the math down here. I'm sorry, it's a little janky, but your excess reserves, meaning the $3,000 you can loan, times the money multiplier in this case is going to equal 3,000 times 10%, or this is them finding the thing. It's 3,000 times 10 equals $30,000. Just like I said. Frankly, I think I explained it easier than the key. That's why I often don't bother with the keys. All right. So there's that. Assume Raymond Bank. We did that. What is the maximum possible change in total reserves throughout the banking system? Okay. So that's a bit of a trick question. Let's go back to the way they phrase it. The maximum possible change in total reserves throughout the banking system is 0. Why is that? Well, because it's already in the banking system, right? You're just putting it in different banks. You're not changing the amount of total reserves. So it's a bit of a trick question. You're just putting money in and it's staying in the system. It's moving from one bank to the next one. It's still the same amount of reserves in the end. So there's not going to be any change. Yeah, I can absolutely do that. That's no problem. All right. I don't know what this is, but it's annoying me, so we're going to time you out for 24 hours. Adios, muchacho. Next. So what is a demand deposit? This is really easy. Remember the M's. M0 is currency, cash and coins. You will not be tested on that. M1 will be tested. That is what we call money, right? So money is cash, coins, your currency, plus demand deposits, plus non-checkable deposits, plus traveler's checks. Don't worry about those. What's a demand deposit? A demand deposit is a checkable deposit. A deposit you can write checks out of. Fancy talk for checking accounts. That's all a demand deposit is. It's a checking account. Okay? And then you got the savings account, or the non-checkable deposit, which is the other account that's in M1. So that's basically what it is. There's nothing more to it. Simple as. All right. So suppose, all right, I can see where this is going already. Suppose the country's central bank purchases $1,000 of Raymond Bank's holdings of government security. Okay. So there's $1,000 in government bonds here. The Federal Reserve comes along and says, all right, we want to buy that back. This is the open market operation of buying bonds. We want to buy that back. By the way, these guys don't get to say no. Okay, they just say, we're buying it back. Here's your money. So they buy it back. Do Raymond Bank's required reserve initially increase, decrease, or remain the same? They remain the same. Why? Because this is not a deposit. This is a government security. The Federal Reserve has bought a piece of property that these guys owned. This is not money that the bank is required to keep in excess of required reserves in any way, shape, or form, because it's not a deposit. The Federal Reserve is not depositing anything with this bank. They purchased an asset. They said, all right, here's your money back. And that's literally all it is, all right? So really simple as that, guys. There's nothing more to it. Now, I want to warn you of the other forms of this question, because this could go a lot harder ways. What else could they do? They could say, all right, they make a $3,000 loan, right? That's what they can do. Calculate the maximum possible change in the money supply. That's the most common question you'll get. And it's a trick question. Because your instincts are, all right, they loan $3,000, money multiplier 10, $30,000 is your answer. No, it's not. Because where was that $3,000? It was in a demand deposit. It's already money. It's not part of the change. So that $30,000 is actually less $3,000, and the actual change is $27,000 to the money supply. Why is that a different answer than the amount of money in demand deposits? Because those are two different things. The demand deposits is the amount of money is in banks' deposits. The money supply is whether or not it's in M1. Those are two different things. That's a trick question they will ask it. How do you calculate that? Well, let me pull up the calculator again. So the way you can calculate that is two ways. Again, this is if they ask you how much of a change in the money supply. Yeah, I'm going to explain the whole thing again. So listen up. This is important. In fact, here, let me do it this way. A question you're likely to get, very, very likely to get on this kind of stuff, is they'll do this. I'm going to show you a difference in the questions. Imagine option A. If Raymond Bank loans all of its excess reserves, what is the total change in the money supply? Compare that to the question we got, which this is paraphrased, but if Raymond Bank loans all of its excess reserves, what is the total change in in demand deposits in the banking system? This B was the question you have on this. I simplified it, but B is this question up here, C1. What I'm calling B is C1. In fact, I'll do you a solid. How about we do this? How about I just call this C1? All right, that's C1. What is different about these questions? Question A is asking you, what is the change? I wish I had a delta symbol. What is the change in M1? This one's asking you, what is the change in the demand deposits? These are two completely different things. Other things are in M1 besides demand deposits. And demand deposits are already a part of M1, but they're a different monetary measurement. Lots of things are part of the money supply. The loanable funds is part of the money supply. The foreign exchange is part of the money supply. If I have an American dollar in cash floating around in the pocket of a Chinese person in Beijing, it's still part of the money supply. It's just not in America at the moment. So there's lots of things in the money supply. They're two different numbers. Now, what is the mathematical difference? The mathematical difference is, and if you want to see an example of this, I'll look it up. This question is famous for this. Me Tierra Bank, baby. The Me Tierra Bank question. This has this difference. Take a look. So, okay, it doesn't have all the question, but it's got the basics of it. So, what is the initial effect of the withdrawal of the M1 on the measure of money supply? If something is already in a demand deposit, it's already money supply, which is the point of this question. It's already in the money supply. So if I have, in this question we're looking at here today, if I've got $5,000 that is... Okay, one moment. Report. One second. Report for racism. report. Very good. Cool. All right, so the question here, where we're at C1. This is saying what would be the changes in the amount of demand deposits that exist in the banking system. If I take a loan and then I spend it and somebody deposits it, it's going from my bank or the bank I borrowed from into another bank and it's multiplying. And it's going to get lent to another bank and multiplied. Lent to another bank and multiplied. You're going to get $30,000. The difference with I'm trying to point out is that if you were to ask the question of what happens to the money supply, a very different mathematical thing occurs. Let me go back to the calculator and I'll show you. What happens here is, remember that you can't loan every dollar that hits your bank. There's a required reserve. So, when I loan, can I do this with a number pad? This is so ghetto. All right, I can't do this. I hate this. 1 second. When I loan $3,000 and I give that out to somebody and they deposit in a bank, since we have a 10% required reserve, right? That's the amount of money that cannot be lent from that $3,000. This new bank cannot lend that. So the new bank only can lend $2,700. And then that gets lent out. And then, so in other words, it keeps getting reduced by 10%. Lender after lender after borrower, and boom, boom, boom. And eventually there's nothing more to lend because you're cutting into, you're getting down to the 0%. There's nothing left because 10%, it's all coming out over time. The bottom line is this. That initial dollar figure has to come out of this number because it's already M1. It's not a change in the money supply. Every dollar this bank lends is in a demand deposit. It's M1 already. So if I lend $3,000, that initial money is not a change. Now that $2,700 that it created, that's a change. And the next round is a change. And the next round is a change. But that first $3,000 is not a change. It's the same $3,000 that was already in the money supply. But again, we can get tricky. What's another tricky way this question gets asked? Well, I can come up with a way to make that wrong. Check this possibility out. What if it says, I'll call this D. If Raymond Bank, let's do it the other way. If the central bank buys $3,000, I don't think they have $3,000, whatever the number is, buys $3,000 of Treasury securities from Raymond Bank, how much what is the total change in the money supply? So I'm basically mirroring question A, but I'm not saying it's coming from a loan. What I'm saying is happening is that it's coming from the purchase of a bond. The bond was never M1. The bond was M3. So let's go back to this chart. Everything in government securities is M3. If I buy that from this bank and give them $2,000 in this case, every dollar of that is new money. The moment I do that, there's $2,000 of new money because it was never money. Remember, money's M1. The moment I give them this cash, it's M1. When it's a bond, it's M3. One of the reasons I teach M3, even though you're never going to be asked about it, is to point out that it's not money. That's why I still teach it, even though we don't even measure it anymore as a country. They don't even measure that number. But I need you to know it's not money. Bonds are not money. They're M3. Money is M1 only. So this is the distinction I'm trying to get at, that there's a difference between monies that are M1 and get lent out, monies that are M3 and become M1, and so on. So just be aware that these kind of tricks exist. They are hard questions. You may or may not get them right, but I'm trying to show you the various ways this could happen. M3 should not be on the test at all. It should not be tested. It's not even measured by the federal government and hasn't for years. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. All right? If they do, it's dirty chess because it's not a thing. All right, let's move on. Question 3. All right, Singapore. We did this one in class, but let's do it again. What is M2? All right, so M2 will be on the test. M1 and M2 are on the test. M1, cash, checking accounts, and checking accounts have 3 names. Checking accounts, checkable deposits, demand deposits, same thing. And then savings accounts or non-checkable deposits. That's your M1. M2 is all of M1 included. So be careful. Questions that are like, oh, how much does M2 change if I take my $100 and put it into my, if I take $100 out of my CD and put it into my checking account, how much did I change N2? You change it $0 because it includes all of M1 also. So be careful. There are multiple choice questions like that. I've shown them to you. You've seen them. They exist. The other parts of M2, so beyond M1, the other parts of M2 are small time deposits, which includes certificates of deposit accounts, CDs. We talked about that. Those are the ones that say you can't touch this for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever. And then money market mutual funds and money market mutual accounts. Well, whoever you are, Snake, I'm not your macro teacher. So that's good to know that they didn't, because it means my students will do better in comparison. Hopefully this helps you. All right, so we got Singapore and Japan as trading partners. We did this in class. Let's do it again. Japan's economy is full employment, and their current account balance is 0. I was asked before to talk about the CFA. We're going to use this question as a chance to do that. Cool. So assume the exchange rate between the Singapore dollar and the Japanese yen changes from 1 Singapore dollar equals 82 yen to 1 Singapore dollar equals 65 yen. All right, again, I mentioned this in class. This is a dirty question. I don't like this question. The reason I don't like this question is because the way that they flip it, right? So in my head, the way I think, your mileage may vary, the way I think, I see 1 equals a many and 1 equals many. When I see that, I think of the 1, like in this case, the Singapore dollar, as the currency of question, the thing I'm paying attention to, right? It's like $1 buys me 82 Skittles. $1 buys me 65 whatever, marbles, whatever the hell it is. I look at that 1 as like the focal point. So then they take that and say, all right, cool. Look at this one thing. Look at this one thing. Look at this one thing. What happened to Japan? And then they do a bait and switch. I think it's actually a dirty way of asking the question. I think they're trying to artificially increase the difficulty. You must be careful. All right, you must not let them catch you on that. And this is going to be when they catch you. Because what's reality? Reality tomorrow, the last question of the test, you've had enough. The I have no F's left to give button was pressed 6 months ago, right? And you just want to be done. That will be the moment that decides if you get a 3 or a 4 or 2 or 3. It really will. It really will. If you just, lock in for 10 more minutes, you'll be fine. So don't let that button get pushed where I don't care, I just want to get done. Pay attention. So, let's go through this. The Japanese yen here is appreciating, and the Singapore dollar is depreciating. How do we know this? The Singapore dollar used to buy 82 yen, now it buys 65 yen. If I have a dollar, an American dollar, that used to buy 82 packs of gum, but now it buys 65 packs of gum, my dollar buys less. If my American dollar used to buy 10% of a gallon of gas, and now it buys 5% of a gallon of gas, my dollar is worth less. Simple as that. So the Japanese yen has appreciated and the Singapore dollar has depreciated. Remember, and if you're not from my class, remember, all currency exchanges are zero sum. Meaning, one goes up, the other goes down. You cannot have both appreciate, you cannot have both depreciate, you cannot have one appreciate and the other does nothing. That is not how this works. They're all one's appreciating and one's depreciating, and it must always be that way. Don't let that fool you, because on multiple choice, they're going to have to give you 4 options, and some are not going to be valid. They give you Japan go up and Singapore stay the same. That's not valid. That can't happen. There are going to be choices on the multiple choice that are not valid. The question is irrelevant. There's no world where one goes up and one stays the same. There's no world where they both go up. There's no world where they both go down. These are not valid options. I don't care what the question is. Cross that crap out. It is no use to you. Focus on only the questions that are even... You don't have to know anything. If you don't know the answer, but 4 choices are in front of you, and only 2 of them have that up-down relationship, right? One is going up, one's going down, and the other choice, one's going up, one's going down. Pick one of them if you have to guess. At least you know there's a chance they're right. It's a foolish thing to pick a choice that cannot be right no matter what the question is. Just cannot be true. So be careful of that stuff on multiple choice. It's very helpful to think that way. All right, so Japan's yen is appreciated, the Singapore dollar is depreciated. Okay, the price of Japanese goods, these bastards. All right, so now they go back. Now they're asking you the value of the Singapore dollar in effect, right? Because what does the wording, the price of Japanese goods in Singapore dollars. That means how much Japanese goods does my Singapore dollar buy? That's what it means. They basically went back now to the original sort of framing that they have here. I hate these people. Now, the price of Japanese goods in Singapore dollars will go up because Singapore dollars need to purchase more yen to buy Japanese goods. So we know, we did this in class. If you're new to the chat, we know a bottle of water in Japan costs about 150 yen, like real life. So if I need 150 yen to get a bottle of water, previously I needed about two Singapore dollars will get me a little over what I need to get a bottle of water, right? In this case here, I'm going to need to get more than 2 Singapore dollars to get a bottle of water. So I have to spend, let's say I'm rounding up to the nearest dollar. I got to spend at least 3 Singapore dollars to get enough yen to buy this water. So that means the price of Japanese goods, even though it's still 150 yen, if I have to exchange my Singapore dollars to get to that yen first, and I now have to spend more Singapore dollars, this is absolutely more expensive. So the price of those goods in terms of Singapore dollars have gone up. What happens to Japan's net exports? Japan's net exports will decrease. If your currency, let's talk about net exports actually. Hang on. Net exports. Net exports is your exports minus your imports. Again, it's a zero-sum game. If one's going up, the other has to be going down. There's no world where one's only going up and the other's not changing. So, your net exports, right? So if I have, let's look at it this way. If the Japanese yen is increasing in its value, that means foreign goods are cheaper for Japanese because their yen is buying more Singaporean stuff, right? Because they appreciate it. And that also means foreigners find Japan's goods more expensive. So if I'm a Japanese, I can buy foreign goods from Singapore more cheaply, and Singaporeans look at my goods and go, they're more expensive. So I can't sell, as a Japanese, I can't sell my foreign goods to Singapore as easily anymore because it's more expensive, and the me as a Japanese can more easily buy Singaporean goods. So my imports are going to go up, my exports are going to go down. Here's a rule, simple rule, put it in the bank. If your currency appreciates, your imports go up, your exports go down, equaling your net exports go down. And vice versa. That's a rule. Always true. If your currency goes down, your exports go up because your stuff is cheaper. So if your currency appreciates, your net exports go down. If your currency depreciates, your net exports go up. Again, that is a rule. It's universal. So if you get a multiple choice question and they give you some combination of answers where that's not checking out, you can ignore those answers. This has to be true. It's just how it is. All right, at least this is the consideration, right? The currency went up and that's what you're basing it on. All right, so that's that. Draw the Phillips curve. Okay, all right. So this is an example of what happens sort of like to your economy as a result of this. So we're drawing the Phillips curve. Do we have where was our equilibrium? What was the situation here? We're full employment. Okay, good. And we're going to show the change. All right, we'll do that. So if net exports goes down, that's a negative on your value of your GDP. Net exports going down hurts your GDP, right? It's a negative. So let's go ahead and draw some Phillips curve. So boom, boom. We got, oh God, whoa, what happened there? We gotta say, oh God, no. There we go. Stop, you bastard. Okay, there. We got, all right, I'll type it out. Why not? SRPC. Wow, hello. SRPC. LRPC. Inflation rate. Unemployment rate, sorry. Again, Mr. Sam, if you're watching, it's unemployment rate, not unemployment. Unemployment is a number of people. You will be wrong. You will be wrong. It's got to be a rate. It's a percentage. Now, okay, this over here, very important, right? Very, very important. Is the only graph that ever shows the natural rate of unemployment. Yes, you can. If you want, can use CPI for inflation rate? I don't want to say yes if I don't know for sure. My instinct is yes, but you told me your teacher didn't teach you half the course. So let me suggest they don't know what the hell they're doing, and you write inflation rate. All right? That would be my advice. And if your teacher's offended, oh well, do a better job. So, and then over here you have inflation. Oh, you can use I. We usually use I, right? We use I. There's my I. That's my new I for today. You could get away with R. It wouldn't really matter. That part's not a big deal. All right. Now, so there it is. That's your Phillips curve. Now, you're technically, I want to point this out, right, for everybody. This is not about the question. This is your equilibrium, right here. Remember, this is nothing to do with the question we're answering. This is just about the Phillips curve. As a reminder, we're here. Let's talk about it. Yeah, so is NRU different than full employment? Yeah, it kind of is, right? So check this out. So here's how this works. There is, how do I want to do this? Let me see if I can find a picture real quick. Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant, this works. All right. This thing here, we need this. This is the business cycle. Everywhere this squiggly blue line goes is the short-run economy. Everybody should pay attention to this. You all were taught this several times. Everywhere that squiggly line goes is your short-run economy. So in the case of the Phillips curve, that's the location of the point on the Phillips curve. In the case of AD, it's whether or not you have a gap. So let's just go back to this question for a second, right? Here was our gap. We have an inflationary gap, right? So how does that look on a business cycle? On the business cycle I was showing you, one second, I'll pull it back up. Your inflationary gaps are everywhere you're above the dotted line. So any time you're above the dotted line, whether you're going up or coming back down, doesn't matter. If you're above the dotted line, you're in an inflationary gap. All right? Now, if you go below the line, you're in a recessionary gap. All right? And so up it goes, boom, boom, boom. Don't worry about peaks and troughs, just listen to me. What is potential GDP and what is NRU? So here we go. A student made this for me once. I use these all the time, these coffee holders. This is, whatever it is. A placemat, coffee mat, what do you call it? Coaster. It's coaster. On the one side, I got the New York Yankees. On the other side, I got some Wildcat thingamajigger, 2024. Okay? Ready? It's still a coaster. Whether I show you this side or show you that side, it's still a coaster. It's the same thing. But this is not the same thing as this. Like, visually, it's not. This side is different. They are different things. The New York Yankees is not the same thing as Wildcats 2024, even though they're both a coaster. So, here's what I want you to remember. NRU natural rate of unemployment. I'm going to define this simply. Equals all the frictional and structural unemployment in your economy. Probably spelled that wrong, I don't care. But listen, another way to think about it, and I really want you to think about it this way, it's the amount of unemployment you have when your economy is fully employed. It's like saying you have a 0% empty tank of gas. That's the same thing as saying you have a 100% full tank of gas. If I measure your tank of gas in terms of emptiness, that's a number. In terms of fullness, that's a number. They're not the same number, but if I'm looking at the same gas tank, they must represent the same reality. And that's the way to think about it. So, full employment, I know, I'm good at this. Full employment is what you have when you're at potential real GDP. That's the YF. So this graph, the Phillips curve, and this graph, the ADAS, are showing you the same economy. The difference is they're showing you different sides of it. So the way I taught my students this is I said, okay, imagine you look in your cell phone as a mirror, like put on the selfie mode, or go in your house, look at a mirror, and wave at the camera. Or not the camera, wave at your mirror. You're waving your right hand, but the camera is waving its left hand. Like if you look in the mirror, that's the reflection is waving its left hand because it's an actual reflection, right? So it's showing you the opposite effect of all the same things, which is why any question the AD can test, the Phillips curve can test. This question we're looking at, and we're working our way through slowly here, I could easily have asked you, draw the AD and show this. It's the same thing. They just want to make it harder, so they ask you to do the Phillips curve. Same thing. So how do you show this on the Phillips curve? In fact, I'll show you how to do it on both graphs. Why not? What the hell? So we start in equilibrium. I'm gonna mark the equilibrium. I've been telling my students you don't have to lately because you don't, but I'm gonna mark it for the sake of anybody who's watching. So let's call this A. All right, that's our equilibrium, A. All right. Yeah, no, that's fair. It is the opposite graph. It's true. It is true. That's fair. So that's A. A here is the same thing as saying, this is my ADAS, real super ghetto. Pretend that's on equilibrium. A there is the same thing as saying A here, this equilibrium. That is the same thing. Now, they said, okay, we have a decrease in net exports. Great. Show the effect. A decrease is recessionary pressure. Well, the unemployment rate going this way is increasing the recessionary pressure. Yeah, I didn't forget crowding out. I promise I didn't. I will get to it. I promise you, I promise you, I promise you, I will do it. So you're going to move this way along the curve. Pardon my ghetto points here. And I think they wanted you to label it X. I don't remember. I'll check. Yeah, X. Okay, cool. What would it look like if you did it on the AD curve? On the AD curve, you wouldn't have a movement along the line. You would shift the AD curve to the left because of decrease in that spending. And you'd have a recessionary gap over here. You have a new recessionary gap over here. That's the same reality. One went that way, one went that way. Because the Phillips curve measures unemployment rate and the ADAS curve measures real GDP. But real GDP is basically the employment rate. The more people working, the more money we make. The more money we spend, the more income we earn. All the ways you calculate GDP. So if you move to the right, you're increasing employment. If you move to the right in this graph, you're increasing the opposite of that, unemployment. So that's why it works that way. All right, so let's finish this question up, and then I will get to crowding out because there was... Oh, I got to do the CFA. That's what we want to talk about here. So what I've taught my students, and for those who didn't get it because you weren't in school today, I'm sorry, but Leslie's cheat sheet is in my classroom. Either have one of your friends scan it, send you a picture, whatever. I taught my students to memorize a cheat sheet of the graphs. And the moment the test starts, take the scrap paper and write them immediately down. All the graphs. You just created a cheat sheet for yourself for the rest of the test. As long as you can keep them in your head for the first 10 minutes of the test, you'll never have to think about... I know it's not a bad idea. I'm really good at this, right? I don't have my crown. I got my priest robe back there, but I don't have my crown. So it is a good idea. You should do it. Now, CFA. I got a lot of questions about current account. We're going to more or less ignore this question for the minute, and I'm just going to start talking about it. Because this is something, it is hard, and it screws people up. And I'm going to have to do some visuals. And that means I got to do more ghetto mouse drawings. But here we go. All right. This is all under the Unit 6. All right. And this is called the balance of, oh God, balance of payments accounts. All right. That's the whole thing. Now, there are two... I bet you can find a graphic for this. Hold on. The reason I struggle to find graphics for this is because the AP exam kind of lies to you. It's not really true. And therefore, if you look for... Yeah, see, they don't have the AP's version of the lie anywhere, honestly. All All right, this does. No, all right, screw it. We'll use this. It's a lie, but we'll use it. So this is more reality, but work with me. The balance of payment accounts is two separate accounts that must balance. They are a scale. So right off the rip, if one side is going up, the other side is going down. It's another zero-sum game. On the one side, you have current account here at the bottom. That is more or less your trade in goods and services. It also includes transfer payments and foreign income. I don't like this. The more I look at this, I don't like it. It's not sufficient. Let me get rid of this. I'll just do my own. All right. So once again, there are two accounts. So in the balance of payment, do I have an arrow? I got an arrow. Here we go. Woo. Oh God, no, that's not what I want. Do I have like a free-forming arrow? I guess I'll make my own damn arrow. All right. Whoop. 1, 2. Okay. Current account is 1. On the other side, the AP exam creates this weird, I don't know, hybrid thing that's not reality called the CFA, which is supposed to stand for Capital and Financial Account. In the real world, the financial account is a third account separate from the other two. They merge them together to make it simple. I wish they didn't do that because it's a lie, but they do it. It is what it is. It's simple. Under current account, you are measuring several things, right? So here we go. Current account measures basically three things. It's the net exports, first off. All right, it's your balance of goods and services. It's trade. We call that trade. This is otherwise known as the trade balance. So if you hear about trade balance, which you will hear about, they're talking about the goods and services. 2, it often refers to whether you have incoming or outgoing. It doesn't matter. Debit or credit doesn't matter. It refers to all flows of foreign earned income. Quite common. If I own stock in some foreign firm, it doesn't matter what it is. I own stock in Jardine Matheson's of Hong Kong. If I own stock in that and they pay a dividend of profit to me, that is, for our purposes, a flow of current account income into the United States from a foreign country. That's a credit for the U.S. and a debit for the foreign country. They're paying a foreigner. I being the foreigner in this case. As an American, that's a positive for the American current balance, and it's a negative for Hong Kong's current balance. Now, the third thing is just net transfers. Net transfers means people sending money overseas. You know, the whole, I went to America, I earned some money, and I WeChatted or WhatsApped it to my relatives back home in whatever, Colombia. It doesn't matter. All right, that's just a transfer of money. That's not earned. That's not a profit. That's just, you know, Ted sent money to Aunt Greta back in Poland. That's all it is. That's all it is. That's your current account. The other side is a little complicated because, again, they're lying. So let's start with the lie, the financial account. The financial account refers to all foreign exchange transactions necessary to facilitate the crap on the other side. What does that mean? Okay. I want to buy Dunkin' Donuts, an American company. I need to buy 10 million coffee cups for iced coffee. There is no shot in hell this is made in America. My guess is it's made in India. That's my guess. Probably not China. So, I have to pay, let's make up a number, $1 million for 1 million coffee cups if I want to buy them as Dunkin' Donuts to be used in my businesses to give my customers their iced coffee. Okay. Nobody in India is going to spend or use $1 million American dollars. They use Indian rupees. That is their currency. So, what happens is this. The net export trade for this instance would be a debit for the U.S. because we are importing. But on our financial account, we are technically exporting dollars to purchase rupees. So our CFA goes up as our net export trade goes down. I know that seems weird, but that's the reality. Think of it like exporting dollars to the foreign exchange market, increasing that supply in order to purchase the necessary currency to buy the foreign product. So if the current account is going into deficit or debit, not deficit, it's not a deficit. If it goes into debit, it's going down. And as a result, the other side must rise because we're exporting the dollars. We're importing the goods, but exporting the dollars. The financial account takes care of that element of the transaction. For this course, that's considered part of one account, CFA. Now, I'm going to draw a little kind of dotted line thinger here, all right, just to kind of point out that this is still part of the side of the balance, but it's really the financial account. Yeah, they're always inverse. They're always inverse. These are a zero sum. These two accounts always do that, all right? Now, number two. Number two on this side is the stuff that's actually in the capital account, and that is foreign investment. Now, foreign investment takes the form of two things. You can have A, direct foreign investment, or B, indirect foreign investment. I'll be honest, I don't really think they're going to test this distinction, but here we go. Foreign investment is basically going to be a couple things. First off, what is the actual products being purchased? The actual products being purchased are usually going to be foreign treasuries, treasury bonds, right? And or businesses, firms, stock, ownership, etc. That's the assets you're going to be talking about. Land, maybe land, I guess, but it's an asset, right? So it's usually going to be foreign treasuries. So there's a reason why I want to buy the foreign treasury of the Bank of Japan. Whatever. Their interest rates are super high. Freaking A. I want to make some money. So I buy their treasury. That's a capital account transaction. That's a capital account transaction. Okay? So any asset I purchase is capital account. But any income it earns me is going to be current account. That's a complicated distinction, but it's one that needs to be remembered. Any foreign investment I make into an asset. So let me just give you a scenario. I'll give you a real scenario. So I purchase, I'll go back to that same company. I purchased stock in Jardine Matheson of Hong Kong. Real company. That purchase of stock is an indirect foreign investment into the Hong Kong economy. Hong Kong, let's just pretend it's its own economy, leave China out of it. Hong Kong has its own stuff. If income is borrowed, is it considered no. Income's not borrowing. You can't borrow income. It's not a thing. You don't get a line of income from borrowing. Income is wages, rents, dividends, and interest. That's it. Borrowing's not in there. So, if I buy stock in Jardine Matheson of Hong Kong, that's an indirect foreign investment. Since I'm an American, for America's current account balance, or for America's balance of payment accounts, this whole thing. For America's balance of payment accounts, because I'm an American, our investment went into Hong Kong. That is therefore a debit for the American CFA, but a credit for the Hong Kong CFA. They're going, they're getting higher. America's getting lower because I took money out of the American economy, that wealth, and transferred that wealth to the Japanese economy in order to purchase, Hong Kong economy in order to purchase that asset. Now, a year from now, Jardine Matheson's doing very well profitably and so on, and they decide to pay all their owners a dividend, a slice of the profit in cash payment. I now get money sent to me from Jardine Matheson as my dividend because I own a chunk of the company. That is therefore going to be a credit in flows of foreign earned income in the current account because it's foreign income on the asset I already own. So the acquisition or creation of the asset, that stuff, that's going to be your CFA as a direct as a foreign investment. But the income I earn from it, that's going to be current account. So that's a tricky distinction. It's certainly harder. It's a higher level kind of thing. More kids will get that wrong than get it right, but that distinction exists. All right. So, having said all that, that's pretty much this whole thing. So, given your answer in Part B2, what was our answer in Part B2? So, the original investment was a decrease in CFA for us, but the dividend was an increase. Yes, correct. Absolutely yes. That's absolutely correct. All right. So, Japan's exports, we said, was going to decline because their currency was appreciating. So given that decline, What's going to happen? Well, we were told that they started this question where Japan's current account balance is zero. That means they're balanced. It's not in surplus or deficit. It's zero, right? The trade is canceling. Every imported dollar is being met by an exported dollar. They're at zero. What's going to change? Well, we said net exports is going to go down. So that means that their current account balance will go into deficit. To balance that deficit, the CFA must go up. So a question like this, even if you didn't know the answer, you had no clue, right? Pick deficit for one and surplus for the other. That's the only chance. Because that has to be true. One's going up, one's going down. That's the way it has to be. In this case, the current account balance would decline, go into deficit, and the financial account balance would go into surplus because they're exporting Japanese yen, to purchase the foreign goods. All right, that was a lot, but that was a whole part 2 broken down. I do recall a question about the crowding out. Let's go over crowding out. Crowding out. Crowding out is always going to be tested in relation to the loanable funds market. Crowding out, again, I'll use the analogy I did in class. I happen to think this is a winning analogy, so I'm going to keep it going. So I'm going to label the title here because this is one of those graphs that really can be confused for a lot of us. I have not forgotten money velocity. Don't worry about it. I already know I have to teach that. Anyone who sticks around, if you stick around for the money velocity question, you will get a question right. Everybody else gets wrong. And I mean everybody else in the globe. Even fives get this question right like 13% of the time. And it's because they don't know the answer. It's an easy answer. Just hang tight. So, whoops, my mouse is in the wrong screen. Okay, so we've got inflation rate. And, no, what the hell am I doing? Jesus God, what am I doing? Wow. Sign that Malvagno is checking out. All right. Rehash that. Real interest rate. And then I was about to write the Phillips curve down. And quantity. Okay. So you have your equilibrium. The equilibrium actually matters a lot. This equilibrium. The actual real interest rate equilibrium. The quantity is not really that important. Now, what is crowding out? So I'm going to use the same ghetto analogy I used in class, but it's been working for 22 years, so I'm not going to stop now. Let's pretend we've got a sandbox. All right? So you're all a bunch of kids playing in the sandbox. So here's our sandbox, right? God damn it. So what's happening is I'm looking at the screen so I can watch chat on this monitor. But my actual monitor that I'm working with is over here. So I can't tell where the mouse is sometimes. So I'm clicking here and it's causing me to lose chat every time. That's why I'm getting annoyed at myself. Anyway, here's my sandbox, right? Look, I'll even color it in. There you go. Now, in this sandbox, to make life easy, we're going to assume that there are 4 children. And these 4 children have managed to more or less amicably decide to split the sandbox into 4 equal parts. And this represents our current equilibrium in the loanable funds market. Now, the loanable funds market is the market where people go to borrow money. Every actor of the economy, from any sector of the economy, public or private, goes to borrow money. Even foreigners can theoretically borrow this money. But for now, let's just talk about the domestic economy. Now, in here, we've got 4 people. All right? So over here, we got, I don't know, let's do the greatest hits. We got Leslie. Who else? We got Gianna. I'm picking Leslie because I want to pick on Leslie. We got Gianna. Who else we got? Who else is coming to mind? We got Rick Sicoli. Got to have our boy Rick, right? And we got I don't know, some guy named Juan Pepe, who a teacher did not know his name, so we're calling him Juan Pepe. So these 4 guys are in the sandbox. These 4 people, are in the sandbox. Now, each of them is going to use the sandbox to do different things. This represents 4 people in the economy borrowing money. All right? Now, Leslie is going to go ahead and borrow money, and she's going to try and open up a veterinary business. This is the thing she wants to do. Good for her. That's her plan. That's what she wants to do. It doesn't matter if she's going to succeed or fail. It's irrelevant. She wants to start a veterinary clinic. She borrows money from a bank to do so, and she wants to do that. That's what she's doing. All right? Gianna over here, I don't know. She's going to get into politics. So she's going to borrow some money in order to finance a political campaign so she can run for local dog catcher. All right? That's going to be her plan there. Rick Sicoli has decided to eat the sand, which would represent his senior year quite well. Ask him about Chicago. And then We got Juan Pepe. Juan Pepe is going to dig a hole to China. That's what he wants to do. That's his plan. All right. Now, some of these things may seem on the surface to be more valuable to society than other things. That's irrelevant. This is what free people in a free economy want to do with their time and their money. They want to go and borrow money and do these things. And let's say that they're able to get the money. Like the banks are happy to lend it, or whoever's lending it is happy to lend it. They're, whatever. They got the money. And here they go. They're doing their thing. The amount of effort they had to put in to get this quarter of the sandbox is represented by R, the interest rate they had to pay. So that's what resulted in this equilibrium setup. And they're all fine with what they've got. They're all satisfied with what they got. They're all doing their thing. And this will carry on like that, no problem. And then comes along somebody who wasn't in the market, because we have demand here. This demand, as I have it, represents only the private sector. The private sector is all the C and all the I. All the consumers and all the investors in the economy. That's all the people that are like you and me, everyday Joe Blows, and then also all the firms. That's who's borrowing it. That's how we got this equilibrium. That's where we are. Now, but then along comes the public sector, which is government. And government not actually paying for any of this itself. By that I mean the decision makers in government don't actually pay any of the government's bills. You and me and the businesses pay the government's bills via taxes. So if the government wants to borrow money to fund a thing, no matter what that thing is, they do not care what it costs. This is a really, really critical concept. These two guys, gals, whatever, these two elements of the society, these guys are interest sensitive. They care how much effort it takes to acquire their quarter of the sandbox. They care a lot, So like Leslie might be much less interested in opening a vet clinic if she has to knife people in order to get her corner of the sandbox, right? If it's a dangerous or difficult process, the juice may not be worth the squeeze anymore, and she might just say the hell with it and walk away. Whereas the government doesn't care. The government's not solving any of these problems. The government's going to make you pay for this. You're the one who's going to go out there and grab the sand for them. And they'll keep sending more you in if they have to until they get the sand. So the government is not interest sensitive. This is a critical difference in this situation. We're getting the crowding out, trust me. All right, they're not interest sensitive. So how do we sort of square this circle? Well, imagine the government comes along and with the full force of, I don't care what I have to pay to get something, I'm going to get it. They come along and go, all right, we're gonna take as much sand as we want. So they come along and they just wipe out half the sandbox. This is now government territory. They just took it out. You can view this two ways, and graphically there are two right answers. You can view this as demand has shifted to the right, because the government is itself a consumer of the money, and therefore it is demanding money on top of the private sector, and demand has gone on. The other way to view this is as a decrease in supply, where the government has simply seized half the sandbox, and the amount of available money has been halved. Either way, look at where they cross now, the new equilibrium. I can't point on the screen, right? But look where they cross now. That's a higher interest rate than we started with. If I shift demand to the right instead, you still get a higher interest rate than we started with. Either way, interest rates are going up. And what does that mean? That means if the four people who were playing in this economy before want to continue to play in this economy and borrow money, they're going to have to compete more heavily with the remaining two people. Instead of four people competing for 4 boxes of sand, we now have 4 people competing for halved 2 boxes of sand. That means that competition will drive up the price to acquire the sand. If I still need a full box of sand, I'm going to have to pay more to get it. I'm going to have to work harder to get it. Now, if I was just eating sand, it's no big deal. Like, society doesn't lose anything here. Rick was eating the sand. He was probably doing more harm than good anyway. And by the way, I am not suggesting that what the government... Oh, wow, I'm using red on red. That's like a crime. Hold on. I'm not suggesting that what the government is doing with half the sandbox is bad. It might be good. If Rick's eating sand and the government is opening up new hospitals or fixing roads or repairing bridges, objectively, it's better for the government to have the money than Rick. Objectively. One guy's eating it and they're fixing stuff. Like, objectively, it's fine, right? On On the other hand, well, what if this extra competition, maybe Rick's not going to give up on the dream of eating sand. And so he creeps up into Leslie's territory and starts trying to eat the sand that she's trying to use to make her amazing veterinary sand castle, right? Leslie might just say, I don't want to deal with this. This is not worth it. It's too expensive. It's too difficult. I'm not going to be able to do what I want to do with this limited amount of available sand. I'm out. And Leslie quits. If Leslie quits, all the gains, all the stuff that Leslie would have done for society, all the lost private sector spending that is lost because the government raised the interest rates, is the definition of crowding out. Literally, the scenario I'm giving you is Leslie literally getting crowded out of that box. She just doesn't fit anymore because there's another person in there who wants that territory. And she doesn't want to deal with it. She's going home. Or maybe she would have dealt with it, but Rick is so into sand, he's willing to pay these higher interest rates, and Leslie cannot. Leslie looks and says, to be profitable, I need to have a loan that is no higher than 4%. And the interest rates go to 6%. And she goes, I can't be profitable if I have to pay back a 6% loan. There will be no veterinary clinic. Well, now we have to ask a question. Is it better? Always government spending causes crowding out. No one else can cause crowding out. Crowding out is not a market interaction. It's the government using the force of government to seize a chunk of available borrowing. So, if Leslie is not going to have her veterinary clinic, now we have to ask a tough question. Do we need roads repaired more or veterinary clinics more? And there's no answer to that. There's no answer to that. I don't know. I can never tell you if Leslie would have made a good clinic. She might have made the worst animal clinic in human history. I have no idea because she didn't make it. I can't prove to you a negative would have been good. I can't prove to you a negative would have been bad. But I can look at things like, okay, the government didn't invent a cell phone. A government could never invent a smartphone. No government anywhere would ever have the creativity to invent a cell phone or a smartphone. Now, the government might create the fiber optic technology or the concept of a Unix system between military bases that spawns the idea of the internet and might put satellites into space that telecommunication companies can use for their cell phones. Yes, that's true. But the idea that somebody in government would come along and go, I know. We need to take technology that exists in all these different forms, put them all together into one tiny little box, call it a phone that hardly anybody uses to make phone calls. Actually, it's like the last thing you do on the thing we call a phone. Jam it all in there and have it made in China and have children in the Congo mine the cobalt for the battery and sell it to Americans for about $700. No government could ever conceive of this. It requires way too much creativity in a system that doesn't like creativity. Government's very much inertia. So it doesn't happen. So the government wouldn't come up with that question. Now, again, we can't prove anything. We can prove, though, that something has been lost. And it might be that it's something you would have done. I'll give you an example. If you want to buy a house, and the government's coming around and borrowing a bunch of money, and what was an affordable loan for you at 3% is now a 6% mortgage, and you did the numbers, and you can no longer afford to buy a house, you might say, I don't give a crap about the bridge over some river in some place I don't go. Because of these decisions, I cannot get a home. The hell with you and your bridge. That's a fair outlook to have. You're allowed to look out for yourself. Now, society might say, well, your house is not as important as a bridge thousands of people are on every day. That's true. But what if the money the government's borrowing isn't for the bridge? What if it's for one of those weird studies I told you about, like giving rats cocaine? That's a thing that happened. If I told you you can't buy a house because the government wants to give rats cocaine, you might lose your mind. I can't have my dream home because the government wants to give rats cocaine? Yeah, maybe. Again, these are extreme examples, but you need extreme examples to see the point. So crowding out is when the private sector does not borrow because the government's raised the interest rate so high, the private sector doesn't want to borrow anymore. Or at least some people of the private sector don't want to borrow anymore. That's crowding out. It's always taught in relation to the loanable funds market because the loanable funds market is the market where you see borrowing happen. Got it? Hopefully that helps. Money velocity. All right. This is a secret. Secret, secret, secret. There is a secret thing. Got different names. It can be called the monetary rule, the equation of exchange. What else is it called? The something something. Doesn't matter. The moment you see the word velocity in a question, you activate this secret trick and you'll get it right. I did, Karen. So, what I'd say is if you go back, what time is it? 8:30. Go back like 45 minutes maybe. I did an FRQ where we did exactly that. We calculated excess and required reserves. Banks can lend. We did the whole thing. Now, you'll find it. Go back. Feel free. I'll be muttering, I'm sure, about velocity when you come back. All right. Velocity. Velocity is a singular idea related to monetary policy. Thank you very much for that. So velocity is the amount of times in a year a single dollar changes hands. All right? I will go over those questions, Gianna, because I think they should be added to the cheat sheet. So the velocity is the amount of times in a year a single dollar changes hands. It's not as often as you might think. All right? So that number represents roughly the speed at which economic activity happens. I'm going to give you some background you don't need, but for some people, the background will make it easy to understand. There was a very famous, very important economist named Milton Friedman. He invented monetarism, which is not the same as monetary policy. And what he believed was that inflation, and he was a 1970s economist, Nobel Prize winner, like the best of the best. Like you can look him up. The guy's got a lot of good things to say. He died recently, actually, maybe 10 years ago. Anyway, so he said inflation is always a monetary problem. And what he meant by that was it's because the government prints too much money. And when he says printing money, he means the government spends too much money that it borrows. So basically, he looks at the loanable fund situation and goes, this is because the government spends the money that the private sector should be spending instead, and it doesn't care how much money it has to make to do that. There's too much money out there, it raises inflation. This was his belief. So he believed that what you need to do was to implement a single equation. And if you implement this equation, you can control inflation. And the equation is M times V equals P times Y. If you're like, I haven't seen this, I know it's only one multiple choice question, but it will be there, so pay attention. M is money supply. V is velocity of money. P is price level, which is a CPI, an index number, or a GDP deflator, either way, times Y, which is real GDP. Now, I want to remind you of something. On this side of the equation, if you take your price level, your index value, whatever it is, 150, and you times that by your real GDP, we have a number for that. That's nominal GDP. This entire side of the equation is nominal GDP. That might matter. Now, if they say velocity, they are going to be asking you about this equation, MV equals PY. All you're going to have to do is solve for one of the elements. That's it. And you don't even have to solve for it, and then come up with a number. It'll be something like, if velocity and real GDP are constant, and price level goes down, what is true about what is true about the money supply? Well, it's mathematics, right? It's absolutely mathematics. So if V is constant and Y is constant and P goes down, M has to go down. That's literally the questions. Let me find one. They're easy. They don't look easy, but they're easy. Here. This is an old question, but it'll illustrate it. This is fine. If velocity of money is stable, meaning it's constant, it's not moving, right? MV equals PY. So here's MV, here's PY. So V is not moving, it's constant. The quantity theory of money, that's the other name of it. Quantity theory of money. Sorry, I forgot that. Of the equation. Predicts that an increase in money supply, if I increase M, here's M, right? So here's M and V. If I increase M and V is constant, the entire other side has to go up because they have to equal. It's just math. They have to equal. The entire other side has to go up. Now, it might be price level that goes up. It might be real GDP that goes up. It might be both. I don't know. But if velocity is constant and M goes up, equation, equal sign means the other side's got to go up. So the answer is going to be nominal GDP goes up. So where the hell did that thing go? Here it is. Increase the nominal output. A is the answer. That's it. That's it. That's all it is. They will not ask you anything more about it. That is how the velocity question is tested always. It's tested in this way. I'll see if I can find another one. And if someone else finds or can point one out, that's fine. But here it is, like laid out, right? You want it laid out? Here it is laid out. This is the whole thing. Quantity of money, velocity of the money supply, price level, real GDP. That's it. One will be, they'll tell you what's constant, they'll tell you what's in motion, and you have to figure out what happens to the other side of the equation. It's got nothing to do with economics. It's can you math? And can you math to a real basic level? This question's easy. Yeah, not even figured out. That will be the question. If you see velocity on the test, immediately stop and write down mv equals py. In fact, John, you want to add something to your cheat sheet? Write down mv equals py. And you're done. You're done. Just remember it's m times v. It's not mv. Yeah, I'll find let me find a question on velocity. In fact, hold on. Let me just get a real one. We have AP Classrooms open somewhere in here. Hang on. Here. Here we go. I'm breaking copyright. I'm showing the question test bank. Velocity. Question type. MCQ. Did I type velocity? I did type velocity. Where is it? I don't see anything about velocity in there. Hang on. That's better. Calculate velocity. Here we go. Come on, move. My mouse dying? My mouse is dying. Alright, here's the velocity question. There. It's the same thing, right? Y is Y GDP. Y, alright, you should have been taught that. Y is always real GDP and nothing else. That is the absolute mandated variable that means real GDP in this course. I pray you were taught that. That is always real GDP. It means nothing else. If the money supply is 40,000, consumer spending is 30,000, nominal output is 50,000, what is the velocity of money according to the quantity theory of money? Okay, money supply is 40,000. Consumer spending being 30,000, does it even matter? Why would that matter? All right, so here, right? Hold on. Let's do it this way. Hold on. Okay. Just so I can mark it up. Okay. Okay, so MV equals PY. Cool. Nominal output is 50,000, so this side is 50K. V is what we're solving for, and M is 40,000. All right? So some velocity times 40 has to equal 50. Is it 1.25? I don't know. 1.25 maybe? 40 times 1.25. There you go. That's your answer. That 30,000 consumer spending thing don't mean nothing. That's it. Too easy. That's it. That's all it is. You see velocity, put MV equals PY, and just figure it out. Don't let stuff like this fool you. It's had nothing to do with it. Your answer is right there. 1.25. And you have a calculator, don't forget. So, whatever. Just do it. It's really that easy. You want to see another one? I'm sure you do. Let's do another one. That's not that kind of question. Here. This is just straight theory, right? This is just logic. This is, yeah, I don't know. Do you still do those? Do they do logic proofs anymore? I don't know what that was even in. I think that was in like geometry. Logic proofs? Or algebra 2, maybe? Yeah, you absolutely are allowed a calculator, and the AP exams test system will have a calculator on as well. Like this thing over here, calculator, that'll be there as well. But yeah, you're allowed a simple 4-function calculator. So if money is constant, again, right? Do I have my, let me screenshot this. Here. MV equals PY. Velocity of money is constant. Cool, this ain't moving, cross it out. And the aggregate supply curve is vertical. Now that's tricky. What does that mean? If the AS is vertical, you are in the long run. That means you have nothing more than that long run real GDP. That means your nominal GDP and your real GDP are the same, right? You're in the long run. You're at equilibrium. So, keep this in mind for a second. All right? Also, here's what else it means. If this is my ADAS and that's my LRAS, here's why. YF, right? If I change price level, what change do I get in GDP? Nothing. So what we're saying is GDP is constant. That's a fancy way of them saying GDP ain't moving. So if M doubles, P doubles. Because V ain't moving and Y ain't moving. So what else is going to double? Let me erase all this crap on the screen, sorry. So if M's going to double, P is going to double. So the answer is C. It's that easy. Trust me, you see it. I'm telling you, everybody everywhere else is going to get it wrong, and you'll be like, oh, too easy, drill sergeant, and that's it. That's it, easy. All right, what have I missed? Where are we? 8:44. Look at me. Wow, what is my analytics looking like? All right, look at me with 17 people and 194 views and an average view duration of 9 minutes. I'm doing great. I'm the next Mr. Beast. All right, what we got? I mean, I'm not noticing anything in chat that's making me go. Oh yeah, John. Thank you. See. You know, when you're my age, you get stupid. All right. The equations you need. All right. Let me go back to this. What equations? Am I in the bottom of the paint screen? I didn't think there was a bottom. All right. Well, apparently. One second. One second. There we go. Now, definitions of words. I mean, you know, give me something more specific. All right, so what are the equations I would focus on? Let's group them by unit. Unit 1 doesn't have any mathematical equations of any kind. All right, I'm going to be honest. What you should do for ample limited reserves, you should go back to my previous... so if you go to YouTube and you type my name in, Jason Melvagno, and you look at my live streams, go back to the last one for macro and the one before that for macro, and there is a pretty in-depth take on what's going on with ample limited reserves. Like, it's a whole thing. All right, so for me to go over that again, I'd be repeating myself. All right, so Unit 1, there's really kind of like, there's nothing here. There's nothing there, all right? Now, Unit 2's got a bunch. Unit 2, and some of these are dumb, but let's just do it. So first off, Unit 2 has how to calculate real GDP. Or GDP in general, but let's call it real GDP. And that's C plus, well, there's two ways actually, I'm sorry, hold on. So how do you calculate GDP? There's two ways. There's the income approach. Oh God, what the hell did I just do? Why did that happen? Okay. The income approach and the spending approach. Sometimes called the expenditure approach. Fancy way of saying spending. All right, Joan, I'll do my best. I'll do my best. That's pretty much the course, but hey, why not? All right, so income approach. The income approach is if you measure... All right, so I got a blast from the past few, actually. We haven't talked about this in a while. It will come up. It will come up. Oh, come on, you bastard. Circular flow. All right? Circular flow. Let me. I'm not wasting my time, actually. Hang on. I could do better. You must know... Nah, I want it to be the same way I teach it. One second. Yeah, that's ghetto enough. That's perfect. Let's do that. There we go. That's proper hood right there. That's Microsoft Paint to the extreme. So, you even got the squiggly lines on the factories. Give this guy some credit. All right, this is Aura or something. All right, now... if I was a food, what would it be? Black coffee. Bitter and strong. So, this thing is a blast from the past, but you need to remember it. They will test this. It'll only be on multiple choice, but here's what they'll do. They'll give you like a fill in the blank. In the circular flow, households are the blank of resources and the blank of products, while businesses are the blank of products and the blank of resources. And the words are going to be buyers or sellers. Or they might say buyers of blank, and then you have to fill in resources or factors or products. All right, those are the things. So resource and factor are the same. I can measure GDP with this. This is how GDP is done, right? Number one, factor market is the exchange of income, rents, wages, interest, and profits. Profits is another word for dividends. That should be dividends, not profits. Households don't make profit. They make dividends. But anyway, in exchange for the resources owned by households. Land, labor, capital, and human skill, entrepreneurship. All right? That's one way to measure GDP. We call that the income approach. So the income approach is to measure GDP in the following way. GDP is going to be equal to wages plus rent plus interest plus dividends. Now, in this course, that is the extent of what you need to know about that. The only thing you need to know also is that that is also the same thing as saying GDP. So income is GDP. It's the same number. Now, the way in this course we really focus, though, is on the other thing, which is the spending approach, which is to go back to the circular flow. And on the circular flow of the spending approach, we come in and look at the bottom of the circular flow, which is the revenue earned by businesses for sales of their goods and services. The reason we do this is several reasons, but mostly it's a lesser number to get. It's the same number, and you have less inputs to count. There's far fewer businesses, and counting those business receipts is far easier than tracking down every last human being's income, right? So, and plus, the other advantage of this is a lot of income is black market, but everybody that earns a black market income eventually spends it on something legitimate. You know, even a black tar heroin drug dealer has to buy toilet paper. So, GDP on a spending approach, and this is the much more important way, this is the way we care about in this course, is C plus I plus G plus NX. And that's obviously consumption plus investment plus government plus net exports. We've gone over that about 10 times tonight alone. Now, those are equations you would need to know. Next, also in Unit 2, how to calculate a CPI with a market basket. Now, CPI is a consumer price index. You can calculate a consumer price index or any price index with a market basket approach. And the way you do that is you take the cost of the market basket in the current year, the year you're currently concerned about, and you divide that by the cost in dollars of the market basket in the base year. So as an example, if I want to find the CPI for the year 2022, and the base year, assume base year of 2021, what I would do, okay, sorry, meant to do that. What I would do is I would find out the cost of the market basket in 2022, the current year. Now, they could give you a schedule of data. You know, they have apples, pears, and oranges. There's 10 currency of each. Here are the prices in 2021, 2022, calculate it out. They could just tell you the value of the market basket. It's going to depend on the question. I can't go through all that right now. But let's just say for a moment that the value of the market basket in the year 2022 is 150 US dollars, okay? And let's say for a moment that same basket of same quantity of goods in 2021 was 140 US dollars, all right? So you divide that, all right? So if we do that division, so you do 150 divided by 140, then you times that by 100. I didn't put that in there, I'm sorry. I should put that in there. You take, oh, god damn it. Oh, come on. How do I select this? You bastard. All right. Times 100. Sorry about that. And that'll give you your CPI. So in this particular case, 150 divided by 140 was 1.07. Times by 100, you have a CPI of 107. Now that leads us to the next bit of math. The next bit of math is to be able to calculate the rate of inflation. Now you can use the same thing to calculate the rate of growth in GDP, because all you're doing is a really basic calculation of percentage of change. So the change by percentage between any values, whatever they may be, you can do this in anything in life, you can do it with weight loss, income, anything, is going to be the new value minus the old value divided by the old value, and then you take the whole business when you're done with that, you times it by 100. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's say, for example, we want to know by what percentage did prices increase from 2021 to 2022. Well, we discovered in our math here that the price index of 2022 is going to be 107. So you take the new value, the 107 price index, you minus it from it the old value. In any base year, the CPI is always 100. So let's do that. That's 7. Divide that by the base year. Oh, sorry, not the base year. Divide it by the older value, because it may not be a base year. I'm going to show you this in a second. And then times that by 100. You have a 7% increase in prices from one year to the next. Now, the ignorant among you go, but Melvagno, 107 index obviously is only 7% bigger than a 100 index. Yeah, but that's just coincidence. You cannot assume the difference in the CPI values is going to be the difference by percentage between other values. Let me give you an example. Let's go to a world where, we have a 107 price index. And we're not comparing to the base year. We're comparing to a previous year that is not the base year. And in that previous year, the index value was 104. So minus 104. So new minus old divided by the old times 100. And that is not 3%. Sorry, that is not, what did we say? It was, I lost track of it. That is not 3%. That is 2.88%. And the more you get those numbers apart from each other, the more stark the differences get. Let's say I have a year where I have a 250 index, can easily happen, and I'm comparing it to a year, several years in the past, maybe 10 years in the past, maybe 15 years in the past, where the price index was only 137. Divide that by 137, new minus old over old times 100. So that's a 0.008%. Did I do that right? Did I miss something? I divided. Whoops, sorry. No, I did that totally wrong. Let me redo that. I had a division. I didn't mean to do that. So my made up numbers were 250 new minus old 137 divided by 137 times fat fingering it in times 100. There you go. That's an 82.4% increase in price. However, the difference between 250 and 137 was 113. It's not a 113% change in price. It was an 82.48 change in price percentage. So you have to do the formula. So you got to be aware of that. It is not as simple as the difference between the variables. That is not the way it works. So you definitely need to know that one 100% without question. What else? I lost my chat. Let me pull the chat back up to see if there was any commentary I should address before I keep going here. All right, so that I'd say is like the big ones for Unit 2. What about Unit 3? We're going to erase more stuff here. Oh, no, that's not the big ones. We need to calculate unemployment. Unemployment. Okay, a couple big numbers in unemployment. Number one, some stats you need to understand. Working age population. Okay? That's the maximum number of people that we could ever get into the workforce. This is the non-disabled, non-institutionally jailed, not students, not college students, not active military, etc. If you're not in some sort of institutionalized setting and you're above the age of, I think it was 16, that definition doesn't really matter for the course. You are in the working age population. How's the live stream numbers holding up? All right, not too bad. We've increased the view duration. Let's go. Let's go, chat. All right, now, you also need to know about the labor force. The labor force is equal to the number of unemployed people plus the number of employed people. Remember, those who are not looking for a job, either because they are retired, gave the hell up, on drugs, homeless, don't care, prefer Fortnite, whatever it is, etc., etc., etc. If anything takes a able-bodied, working-age person, all right, and puts them out of the workforce voluntarily, they are considered to be, all right, a discouraged worker, and they do not count as unemployed. They do not count. To be unemployed, no job, looking for a job. Those two things must be true. No job, looking for a job. If you're not actively looking for a job, you're not unemployed, you've given the hell up, you're a discouraged worker. Which matters, because that means if I got 10 people, check this business out. I got 10 people in my economy, right? 10 people in the labor force. And of those 10 people, let's just make it real easy. 5 are unemployed. 5 are employed. Cool. That means I have an unemployment rate of 50%. Because your unemployment rate is, or equals, this is math, unemployment divided by labor force. That's all it is. And it times 100, obviously. I'm not going to type that in. But what happens if one of those unemployed just give up? They want to embrace their Fortnite arc. They want to enter their Fortnite era. And so now we have 4 unemployed because that guy gave up. And we have 5 still employed who are working. But our labor force is no longer 10. Our labor force is now 9. Because when you give up, you're not either one of these things, right? So now if we calculate our unemployment here, instead of it being 50%, look what happens. We've got 4 people unemployed divided by a labor force of 9 times 100. We've dropped the unemployment rate by 6% by convincing Mr. I can't get a job to go home and play Fortnite. That can happen. So be aware of that. A discouraged worker or an unemployed person leaving the economy and becoming discouraged actually reduces unemployment rate. It's a bit shocking, but true. Now, the other thing I'd be asked to calculate here is the labor force participation rate, which is simply labor force divided by working age population times 100. Just make sure the whole business, right? It's like this. Labor force divided by working age population times 100, right? So if we've got here, whoops. So if we got, let's go back to that same economy. We got a labor force of 10 people, we said initially. And we have a working age population of 15 people. Times 100. We only have a 66.6% labor force participation rate. Everybody else is giving the hell up. That other third of the economy gave the hell up. They're at home, or they're retired, or they're not anything even negative. I don't always make it seem like it's negative. What if you're just a mom who wants to take care of her kids? Or a dad who wants to take care of his kids, or a dad who wants to take care of grandpa, or your uncle's going and you need to have somebody around to take care of him, so that person left the job. All those things are true. All those things are true. All right. You get 70 minutes for 60 questions. That's the multiple choice. 70 minutes for 60 questions. All right. Now that I would say is the Unit 2 stuff. Now if we keep going with Unit 3. What do you need to know for Unit 3? The only thing in Unit 3, mathematically, you need to know is going to be, formula-wise, MPC plus MPS equaling 1. And this leads to our multipliers. You have the spending multiplier, which applies to all spending of any source. Government, foreigner, tourist, investment, anything. Right? All those things. Spending multiplier is equal to 1 over MPS. Your taxation multiplier is equal to negative MPC over MPS. Remember that, or you can use the shortcut. The shortcut is the the spending multiplier minus 1 times negative 1, which is a fancy way of saying just take the same number minus 1 and flip it negative. That's the mathematical way of saying that, but that's all it's saying. I'm thinking about Unit 3. Think that's it? I think that's it off the top of my head. Unit 4 only has the money multiplier. So in Unit 4, you got the money multiplier. That's the money multiplier equals 1 over required reserve ratio. We've done that before. It's almost always going to be 10. What about inflation or interest? What do you mean? What do you want to do with them? I mean, interest isn't really calculated in this class in any real way. Like, all right, I'll give you an example. So you might refer to real. So, okay, you're probably referring to real values equaling nominal values minus inflation, or nominal values equaling real values plus inflation. And that's just that. That's all it is. So, for example, if I tell you off the gate, you've got current inflation of 3%, and you have a real or a nominal interest rate of 4%, and I ask you, what is real interest rate? Well, real is going to equal 4% minus 3%, and therefore it's going to equal 1. That's it. I assume what you mean. That's all there is. Deflator. We should do deflator. Good idea. Let me see if I can find a question regarding that. Alright, so first off, that's your deflator formula. I'm putting it up here like this with a cut and paste because I don't really know how to draw that out without looking like absolute crap. So to find the GDP deflator is nominal GDP over the real GDP times 100. You'll only have to do that if they're specifically giving you the numbers and telling you to do that. Or they give you they'd have to tell you the numbers up front. They can't just say do it. So that's their formula itself. Nominal GDP over real GDP times 100 will give you your GDP deflator. All right. Now, That's it. I mean, that's the formula. I'm trying to think what else really. I lost chat again. Hold on. I think that's it. If you have to, here's one you might get. Suppose you get a real GDP value. I don't know where to put this, honestly. I'm kind of running out of... I think I'm hitting that wall again. I think the wheels are coming off. I feel my brain getting mushy. All right. So let's say... The hell are they talking about? Oh, deflator. So let's say I have a nominal GDP. I have a nominal GDP. I'm going to make up a number of $2 million. All right, that's my nominal GDP. Not screenshot it. Go through the video and screenshot it. I mean, this document sucks. It's a Microsoft Paint document. I keep deleting and just go through and screenshot. Best I can do. Or honestly, here, hang on. I got you covered. Actually, hang on. Is this still on the internet somewhere? Let's find out. This. So I believe I made this available previously. I don't remember, but here you go. This is a lot of what we discussed in one simple cheat sheet. I mean, it's not hard to find. You literally Google AP macroeconomics cheat sheet or something like that, and it's all going to be in here, right? How you do this, how you do that, whatever, blah, 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 how things work out, stuff to keep in mind. Here are... calculating the money supply, monetary basis, all that stuff. Boom, boom, boom. All the graphs are in here. These are and off you go. And here's some definitions. So this is a handy little thing here. So you type in AP macro formula sheet. You're looking for HubSpot user content 30.net. This thing. That's what you want. And it's valid. It's valid. I don't know if it's got any reserve market stuff on it because it's probably pretty old at this point. But feel free. That's all right. You'll be okay there. So that's just an example of if you want copies of it. Now, I was making a point. Let's say I got $2 million in nominal GDP, right? So let me mark this off. This is our nominal GDP. And I want to solve for real GDP. I want to know what real GDP is in this economy. Now, to do that, I'm going to need an inflation rate. Sorry, not inflation rate. I'm going to need an inflation stat, an index value. I'll make up an index value. It doesn't matter. 126. That's the index value. CPI. That's your CPI index value. How do I calculate a $2 million GDP? Well, the first thing you do is you take your index value and divide it by 100. You undo that multiplication that brought us to 126. So 1.26. You then take the $2 million thing. 2 million. Oh, whoops. I'm sorry. My fat head's covering it. Divided by 1.26. There's your actual GDP. That's your real GDP. You divide it by the 1.26, not 126. You take out that 100 multiplication by dividing it out, and then you divide your nominal GDP by that 1.26, and Bob's your uncle. You have a real GDP in this economy of $1,587,301. So that difference between the 1.5 million and the 2 million, that difference, that's your inflation. That's the amount of increase in prices that have occurred to create that nominal GDP price level. All right, so that is where are we? 9/11. That's fortuitous. Okay, so I think that might be it. I'm kind of done. Thinking if anything else coming to my mind I really need to care about. Alright, so some of you in 10th grade may remember I put out like a motivational video and stuff like that before the AP exam. Let me do you the compliment of treating you like an adult. If you need me to put out a motivational video to get you motivated to do well on your AP exam in your senior year of college, I weep for what's going to happen in September when everything you do is AP. You can do this. This is well within your ability to handle. Everyone you can do fine. Not everybody can get a 5, but nobody has to get a 2. everyone can get a 3. So let's do it. Let's get it done. Let's end the year strong. All right. I promise you'll have a good time for the rest of the year, but let's get this business done tomorrow. All right. I'll be in all morning. Your exam's the afternoon, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I don't even remember. My brain's so shot. What about sticky wages and fixed prices and how those work? What about them? Well, watch the last video. It's in there. I talk about sticky wages quite a bit in there. So that would be my recommendation. The one from the other night, I cover sticky wages. But yeah, I'm going to call it. I will not be denied. I am going to end the stream. So thank you very much. I'll see y'all in the morning. Hopefully it was helpful. And if it wasn't helpful, well, hopefully your time was at least not terribly wasted. All right. Adios.